Today's episode is titled, Are We Preparing Children for Jobs That Won't Exist? And it was really exciting getting ready for this because there's so much change happening. Let me start by asking you something. If a job is already being automated today, why are we still teaching children to prepare for it? Not in 20 years, but right now. Welcome back to In My Kitchen with Yvonne. We don't just talk education. We sit through the hard, difficult conversations, and we have the most exciting people we can find join us to talk about it. Today's conversation might make us all a little bit uncomfortable because we need to talk. Pull up a chair. Joining us, Matthew and Betty. Betty, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about why this topic might mean something to you and why you're the right person that we should be talking to about it.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Yvonne, for having me. And I'm glad. I'm Betty Johnson. I am currently a school improvement partner, director to Renovate Recruitment and Consultancy, and a host at B3 Inspire. So I have spent over 2 decades and still counting in education, very, very passionate about the classroom and about educating the young generation. And of course, I've been involved in curriculum development over the years during my experience. And currently, I'm focusing a bit more about AI as well as using it, leveraging to support teacher workload. So this conversation is crucial.
It's crucial. Betty, you bring a depth of experience around people, around systems, and how learning actually translates into real world values. There's anybody that can tell us a bit about that? It's someone who's been in headship. So we're going to be getting into that and understanding a little bit more about it. Matthew, over to you. I know you are in that industry that is going through all these remarkable changes. Tell us about you, Matthew, and why you're the right person to be here today.
I'm the assistant school director at the Cambridge School in Bucharest, and AI isn't my official job. It's teaching and learning in the secondary. It just happens to be my passion and interest is intersected quite well with my role in the school. And so I approach this all through like a teaching and learning lens. And I think the question of the day about what do we need to teach and what do kids need to learn in this AI is something that all schools need to consider. And I'm almost catching up with Betty. I've had 16 years now in education, so I'm catching up with it. But so my experience goes from working in a state school in Tottenham for 8 years, and I've worked here for 8 years in Bucharest. So and on the side with my day job, I write blogs. I think I do some podcasting, and I share with other schools that reach out to me advice and guidance and support whenever I can, really.
So that means you hear from lots of different directions, don't you?
Yeah, and a bit more internationally because I'm involved in a few international networks and chains as well, where people get together and just sharing. Like I'm speaking at the COVIS conference next month, where it'll be head teachers and educators from 150 something, like all over the world. So 150 different schools will be there. So I'm doing something about safeguarding next week. So I can imagine I'm going to get given a lot of tricky questions after that one. So it's going to be quite uncomfortable to talk about. I think that safeguarding aspect, probably more so than what we're going to talk about today. But I think it's broadening and raising some things that people maybe that aren't that technologically savvy, it might slip under the radar for them, and they might be like, oh, I'm not really interested in AI, but then there's another level of actual things you need to be worried about with young kids as well.
Yeah, last week we had a couple of experts on, and we were looking at deep fakes because young people are using AI to create deep fakes of their teachers. Someone takes in a phone, records a lesson, and I think I forgot what the word is, but they taunt a teacher into behaving a certain way, and then they create deep fakes, and so safeguarding is becoming interesting. I would imagine.
We had someone turn up with a pair of the Meta Ray-Bans 2 weeks just before the Easter break. So luckily we had already put a policy in place, but they were caught trying to take pictures of other students and the teachers using them in the class. The teacher called them out because we'd done training on them, but they could have probably got away with that somewhere else.
Yeah. Exactly. And this is some of the things we'll be looking at, what we're actually preparing the students for. So let's put the kettle on this one because it's not just theory, it's actually real life. So let's get into the first segment. And in the first segment, we're going to look at productivity and outcomes. We keep talking about outcomes, but outcomes for what? Children are learning business studies, marketing, accounting basics, but AI is already doing those jobs faster, cheaper, and at scale. So for you, Matthew, from a business lens, a strategy lens, because I would imagine as a director, you're running your own podcast, this is some things that you're coming across now. I was just listening today to the diary of a CEO, and he was saying a lot of what they do is being run by AI. A lot of YouTube algorithms are now feeding AI. And what are they, what are some of these jobs in real time that we are preparing the young people for?
I would say I do a lot more with agents outside of school for kind of like my, wherever you want to call it, my side hustle than I would do for in school, mainly because of the students' data and the school's acceptable use policy and things like that. But I definitely like tools like Claude, working with Excel, working with coding apps and things like that, and what you can create and what you can connect to these tools now through the like model context protocol, MCP, and just connecting these tools to each other and having an AI speak to a social media platform and give you insights, or work with a spreadsheet, connect to the stock market. So there's more ways you can connect these tools to sources of data and get them to translate that and process that. And even for me, going through, I think I exported like 120 blogs of mine through off LinkedIn that I'd written and got AI to process them and help me come up with trends and patterns. And maybe there's some insights for a book that I'm writing that I missed. So, but I like to use AI in a way where it's kind of me and it's helping me. It's not making everything up. Like, I'm giving it lots of information about myself for it to work with. And I think that's something that students need to understand about that AI literacy piece. If you just prompt an AI or ask it to create a spreadsheet for a business, you're just going to get the vanilla. You're going to get like down the middle, the bland, the plain, just the generic. You're going to get the most probable thing. Whereas if you give it a lot of context, where if I give something like an AI tool 120 pieces that I've written myself and then ask it to build something from that, or find some connections, or is there a business strategy in here that I'm missing, is you're working with a lot more of the random, unique. And I think that's something that we forget sometimes with AI. If everyone just follows all the videos that I get on Instagram about Claude Code, everyone's just going to produce the most mundane. Everyone will just produce the same thing ultimately, and you'll end up with like
Right.
120 of the same thing that no one will want. You really have to think about your value. And we've done a digital entrepreneurship unit this year. It's a new unit in the curriculum, and it's based, I think Daniel Priestley or someone like that, where essentially we've got the kids to draw a Venn diagram of what they're interested in and what other people might need. And then like in the middle, okay, that's your business. You're really interested in chess for uh, kids age 13. Okay, you're going to start this business. So they're like actually looking at things they're actually interested in to build from that. And then we use AI tools that are appropriate, like things in Canva, some chatbots that we have vetted and we know are safe and secure. Yeah, so I think that's the main thing. I think you've still got to teach people to be them. And I still would argue that you need a broad and balanced curriculum, because you don't know you don't know if you're interested in music unless you've played a little bit of music. You don't know like if you're going to be good at drama until you've been forced on, like the drama teacher's gone like you're on stage perform. I know some of those moments might be uncomfortable for me, but I didn't like getting up on stage. But when I had to go to university, I had to present and give presentations, and those skills kind of came through later. If you personalize it to the point where only everyone's studying what they want when they want about the things that they want, you aren't going to experience some of the moments that we've probably experienced where we've been put in an uncomfortable situation or had to do something new for the first time, and that's suddenly become our passion.
Matthew, I'm going to come back to you. You're actually doing something so important. You're bringing in the new into what you're teaching, but also the relevant. Now, to you, Betty, this one is for you. From what Matthew has just said, from what you also know, would you say AI is like learning or using a tool or learning a new language? And therefore, are we preparing children for productivity or for performance.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Matthew, for that great work you're already doing with your children. I think that is exactly the direction we should be heading. And I agree with you. We need that children being exposed to different contexts in terms of the curriculum. If I am to look at the curriculum over the years, of course, the national curriculum has not been updated since 2014. And the recent review we had with Becky Francis review actually revealed that the curriculum has not been designed to prepare children to think for themselves. It has really been a curriculum that let children perform. So it prepares them for an assessment, which is totally agree. We need a level of balance here because we need to know, are children ready for the next phase of their education? Where are the gaps? So we do need assessment. But from that review, it was very clear that the curriculum crowded with so much content that limit what really matters. So they talked about things like collaboration, critical thinking, and it was really exams heavy. So with this new review and the new curriculum, of course, which is not out until 2028, we are going to see things like oracy. We're going to see things like digital and media literacy, which is what is really relevant in this current situation we find ourselves in, and educating the young generation. Absolutely important that we focus on what they need right now in a world that is changing quite drastically.
I think it's really refreshing to hear, one, that there is changes coming up. Two, that those changes are a little bit far away so that we can be learning before those changes are implemented. But there's always going to be that question, what happens in between? Because unfortunately or fortunately, as learning happens, we are preparing them, aren't we? So every 4 years, we are going to churn out, or 5 years, we are churning out people into the workforce. And we're having these changes happening so quickly.
I mean, Yvonne, I couldn't agree with you. The pace at which things are changing. Industrial Revolution took 80 years. If we look at digital revolution, it took 30 years. Now, if we come to AI, it's no longer taking decades, it's taking years. And even within years, the fast pace of things changing on day-to-day basis is quite rapid. And it gives us as educators that question of totally, are we really equipping these children for this fast-paced world? That is quite uncertain.
Yeah. And then over to you, based on when we have taught them and now they're going into work with these skills that they've learned. For example, you referenced Daniel Priestley. Daniel Priestley, key person of influence. He's quite big in entrepreneurship. Does that mean that's what we need to be teaching young people? We need to be teaching them that work actually has meaning where you prepare the work and you become the leader.
It's really tricky because no matter, with all good intentions, any curriculum review or anything I do, it's been done by a 43-year-old for 10-year-olds. My lived experience is not their lived experience. So there's always going to be a bit out of date and there's always going to be a disconnect. And I can't really if I could lick my fingers and get the air and be able to tell you what's going to happen in 5 years' time, I wouldn't be sitting in a classroom. I'd be getting paid a lot more. But it's one of those things where you have to do it with good intentions about what you think is going to be the most benefit. And if AI is going to impact industry and entry-level jobs, you're going to have to give children more of a skill set to start things themselves. And I could give a personal example. For me and my wife, I'm 5 years older than my wife. You won't be able to tell because I moisturize. I graduated university and I went straight into a job. When she was at university, in order for her to get a job, they were saying, okay, you're going to have to do internships and work for free in the industry. So when you get into the workplace, you could already say you've got X amount of years of experience. And I became a teacher when I was 27. So I worked for 8 or 9 years in industry beforehand. She had to prove that she had skills in that industry before she went into it's like the chicken and the egg. So I think if the Stanford Index report came out like a few days ago and saying the entry level is disappearing, we need to give students the ability to create their own entry level. And I have students coming up to me who have gone on to the Lovable and things like that and are making their own apps. There's a student in my year 13. He's running his own social media company and he's filming for Kia and water bottle companies. I haven't got it. He just showed me. It was a very famous brand in Romania. He's just done a movie for them. He was late to my class today because he was filming. And I think encouraging some of that starting in students is great. I think you gotta, how do we make people like want to do most things? So it's about how do you build those skills and over time and allow students to have opportunities to show how their subjects link to each other and how they can build on multiple passions to form something that's unique that can represent them. And I think that kind of making your own future or being a little bit more self-starting and driven is probably going to be that thing that differentiates you. We need to instill that mindset in students that there's not been a guarantee that you're going to have work. And I think that guarantee is going to become a little bit more looser. I think we need to prepare students a little bit more for that, about what it's going to be successful in this age if the bottom rung has gone. And that's something I haven't got a firm answer on yet, but I think we need to, again, that broad and balanced approach where students can, like, I had some students preparing for an English presentation today, but they're standing up and talking to their peers about it in the lesson and preparing a presentation. So those kind of skills, I think, and pitching themselves, I think, is going to be a bit more of a skill in the future.
Sounds to me from what you, Betty, you're saying and what you, Matthew, are saying, the thing that's coming up is change is inevitable.
Mm.
The world we're living in is not just change, it's fast-paced change. And then from what I just heard you, Matthew, saying, we are teaching them for work, but we also need to be thinking about mindset shift. That's the thing that stood out the most, teach them, the soft skills, almost the thing that's not in the curriculum, teach them what's out there, teach them to philosophical ways of thinking, like just finding information for themselves, finding things that are out there is what we need to be thinking. So let's move to the second segment, because as educators, something tells me we probably would speak for a very, very long time about the productivity elements and academic stuff. But there's something else. Not all learners are equal, right? You realize there is, things like inclusion, special education needs, diversity. They also exist in our classroom. When the system is shifting, it's really important for us to think who gets left behind. I was listening to a really Steve Butler agency debate. Daniel Priestley and they were talking about taking care of society, making government take care of the people that cannot take care of themselves, because they're also part of society. And then there's entrepreneurship and the need for it. So both thoughts exist. But if automation is going to replace those kind of structured, predictable roles, which we know, what happens to those children who really depend on structure? Betty, what does that mean for inclusion, especially for special education needs?
Such a very important question, and totally agree with you, Yvonne. Of course, when the world shifts, unfortunately, those that are already carrying the heaviest load get hit the hardest. And in the classroom, it's usually our SEN learners. And what you talked about there, if we're looking at the future with automation, in the past, you were able to put structures in place for some of our learners or our adults who have learning differences. So they know that this is the pathway to employment. And if all those roles are now being automated, then of course they are the ones that's going to be impacted the most. I think it all starts with a case of changing the mindset. And that reminds me of, if we are looking at, for instance, Branzel's work on trauma-informed strengths within the classroom, they talk about the fact that neuroscience states that children or people, we feel safe before we are able to learn. And with a world that is so uncertain and with a world that is so changing, what could we do in place to support our learners that learn differently, our SEN children? How do we adapt and support them? And if I'm talking about the education side of things, I'm going to refer back to the Francis curriculum review. It has absolutely stated that they would want to involve inclusion right at the start of the development, not afterthought. So SEN being an integral part, and I think we've seen a shift already within the new Ofsted framework, where inclusion is a golden thread within in the UK now, it's not standalone. It's not a footnote for achievement. So almost achievement and inclusion are parallel. They are equally essential. And as a school, yes, we need the children to learn. We need the children to be prepared for the next phase. We need the readiness, but also inclusion sits right almost parallel to that preparation in terms of that achievement. And how does that look like for those children who learn differently, those children who need that extra scaffold, those children who need that extra support? So it's interesting that in terms of government side, policy-wise, it's the first time we're actually seeing any curriculum language in the field of like that inclusion side coming through. So the 2028 curriculum would be great. But currently what we do, I do believe that it's about teaching the children as well growth mindset.
It's encouraging
Totally.
to know some of the conversations we don't hear. We tend to hear all the wrong things that's happening with
Yes,
government.
yes. There's a lot happening. For instance, if I don't know whether you are aware of the school bill 2025, basically got a target of supporting children with its mental health and support teams 100% by 2029 to 2030. So that extra support sitting alongside the education is fantastic, and we want both because it is necessary. These are children need that extra support. Almost like I don't see inclusion as treating them differently. It's almost, let's make it equitable. Why do we have to? Some children will start already probably this high. So what stops us from putting that step so that it is equitable, it is equal, so they can thrive? And I think for us in schools, I see schools working so hard with limited resources. It's another challenge. Regardless of that, schools are working incredibly hard around this. And it's great to see in terms of policy level, curriculum reviews also looking and addressing this for the future. But it's all mindset, and it's about growth mindset for children.
That's fantastic. Matthew, are we creating a wider gap between those who can adapt and those who are never supported to with, like AI? Is it going to be even better for them? Now they can find the support themselves where we were lacking.
I think I'm a big fan of assistive technology, obviously working in computer science. It can really help and support students. Like for a personal story, like I really struggled at school. I think I got like C's, and then I got my A levels were C, 2 E's and an N. And I thought education was not for me. I somehow ended up at university and then was diagnosed with dyslexia. And once I had access to the right support, I left with a 2-1. And then I got a master's, and then another master's, and I can do it. I just need additional time and support. AI for me, the only reason I'm probably here speaking to you right now is because when ChatGPT came out, I've always wanted to blog and put my ideas out there, but dyslexia was the barrier. Right now, I could write my ideas and get something to tidy them up for me or fix the spellings and grammar mistakes. So that's really for me why I'm here today talking to you. And I think we've got to choose as a society the way we want to go. Like the easy answer is usually to widen the gap. That's usually what businesses and technology and society does, is they leave people behind. And we need to have almost a line in the sand to say we're not going to do that, be it a disability or an inclusion lens, be it a societal or class-based lens or cultural or racial. We've got to have a line in the sand to say if we're going to move forward as society, we want the utopian version of this. And I think that means that you don't get there by ignoring people. There is a scope for it. AI allows me to differentiate for my students and supports me in getting ideas. Differentiation as a teacher is incredibly hard. And what might work for one student with ADHD or dyslexia won't work for another one who has the same kind of label and diagnosis, but underneath it's going to be very, very different. So I can use AI to get ideas without being mindful of their personal information, but I can say I've got X, Y, Z to differentiate for. Can you help me? And I think in the workplace that could be used as well. And hopefully things like the Neuralink and more assistive technologies, I think will exist out there, which hopefully will provide opportunities for more equality and inclusion. And one thing that was said at the beginning is someone told me that in the UAE, it's not called SEND, it's called People of Determination, which I thought was quite nice. So I think that, yeah, there are going to be certain things that are barriers. And I think lots of people are people of determination. And I think we need to give them the tools and the space and time to be determined.
Yeah, can I just add to that? I'm so pleased that, Matthew, you mentioned leveraging AI as a tool to support you in terms of adapting resources. for the children. I think that in within education sector, that is such a powerful tool, and we need to look into embracing this. Like you rightly said, now you can actually adapt resources for all different groups within a short period of time. So teachers are not feeling that burnout, which is what I, of course, write about in my newsletter on LinkedIn, supporting these teachers. But I think schools needs to look at embracing the tool. Of course, there are safeguardings, compliance that we need to be aware of, but it can also really support these teachers in terms of efficiency and supporting the children that need this adaptation the most.
Yeah, and some of it isn't resource creation. Some of it is
Mm.
like, okay, I'm teaching fractions. How do I differentiate fractions for this particular set of needs in front
Right.
of me? That's the and just sometimes just getting ideas, because you only have your own experience to bring to the classroom. And
Right.
I might have had to teach fractions to a student with ADHD or autism in the past, and I can
Wow.
draw upon that, but that isn't probably going to overlap
Right.
100% on what this student
Totally.
needs. So at least
Totally.
getting some ideas, is an amazing place for a teacher.
Mm.
It's only giving me ideas, and I can say, give me 5 ideas of how I could teach this for XYZ, and then
Yeah,
I'm still the filter. I'm going to choose
that's
what's going to
right.
work for me. But it's given me some options that might not sit outside my bubble of experience. And what works for an English teacher isn't going to work for a maths teacher or a geography teacher or for a
Mhm.
science teacher. Like, it's going to be
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. And I suppose that's where the skills of being a teacher come in, right? Because I mean, being a teacher takes work.
Mm.
There's the original studies that you will go to university or do a postgraduate, but we can't say enough how much experience is important because we are dealing with human beings and
Yeah.
they're not the same day to day. Yeah. So
The truth is, of course, skills like empathy,
yeah,
critical thinking, AI cannot do those things.
no,
Need a teacher to be able to read the room, to actually see the child and go, are you okay? I mean, things around self-regulating, the research around anxiety. If we look at the NHS, what the NHS is reporting, 1 in 4 adolescents are probably experiencing mental anxiety, mental health and anxiety. AI cannot solve that problem. We need that human effect, of course. So if we can leverage on those admin and those probably giving us those ideas, but the actual teacher touch, the relational side of things, means that we spend more time focusing on those, and that's what matters, and that's what AI cannot replace.
powerful. And Betty, you've just helped us to get to the next segment where we're going to be talking about well-being. This is so important in
Mm.
the world in which we live in. My wife and I were having a walk, and you mentioned something that really made me think. Children today, they are being attacked from all angles with screens and messages that immediate. What kind of effect is that having on their well-being? But let's just close that inclusion conversation because something powerful has been said between both you yourself, Betty, and Matthew, and that's inclusion, thinking about access in school. I love what Matthew said. I wouldn't be here if not for the tools and what that has opened up for me because everybody else had said I was a failure because systems that we use to judge what success means. Maybe the thought there is how to use this revolution and Betty putting that step to creating. So let's go into well-being. What does it mean for a young person in today's world? How can that affect your mental well-being? Hearing these messages, we're being prepared for a world that will not exist. I mean, what effect can that possibly be having on them? Should we be having more of these conversations to think about some of the difficulties we have in behavior in the classroom? Could
Mm.
they maybe be coming from some of these messages? And
Mm.
can you imagine the level of uncertainty that must bring to a person? Yeah, I'm
Mm.
learning math. What does that mean? And we all say that when you're in, why do I have to learn math when it got difficult? But that was more because it's what you say when things are hard, right?
Mm.
Why am I learning English? I'll never use this, right?
That's right.
We're
Yeah.
talking in English. But when we're talking about anxiety, lack of motivation, well, is there something deeper than that? Matthew, what are you seeing in the classroom?
I think the media needs to be very careful about the messaging that they're going to do
Mm.
over the next few years, because I was watching was it watching or reading something the other day? And it was like, in 10 years, 80% of jobs will be gone. And it's quite someone who's quite white in the business field. And these things are always a bit hyperbolic. So, but my daughter's 7, so she will be applying to university and around in 10 years time. And I don't have a neat answer where I'm going to say to her as a parent. And it's the trite, oh, we always need humans. But like on the other side, you've got this other messaging saying, and I think the corporate world will always try to go down of maximizing profit, and that will probably win out. So, and then I'm also currently in a school right now with people who are super happy they've been accepted into university, but are also secretly wrestling with, when I leave university, am I going to be unemployable? And I think we have to think what the social contract is going to be moving forward. Because ultimately, loads of kids might just say, what's the point? What is the point of going to school? What's the point of, if the world's going to be automated behind the scenes and universal basic income will arrive or something to that effect? That's a positive version. The negative version is we can't afford anything. We're all like, it's Mad Max kind of scenario for us all. But I don't have any answer. And I think we need to be very, very careful about the messaging. And it's very hard as a teacher to be upbeat and positive sometime when you're hearing the other side of the news saying, okay, we've got a kid who's got into Cambridge. What am I going to say to her? Congratulations, you're going to be unemployable.
Working hard does
You can
not
say
make that.
both in the same sentence sometimes, because that's what's going on in the messaging. And I think you might end up with people having an identity crisis. And I think if people are told there's no point going to university anymore, that will trickle down. There's no point going to sixth form anymore. That will trickle down. There's no point going to school anymore. And they will just drift off. And I'm from Stoke-on-Trent, which is a very deprived area, and I live in an area where there's 5th or 4th generation unemployment in the council estates near me. And I think you might have more of apathy towards life if there's no point.
If you just permit me to jump in, just to widen that scope. What I'm hearing is there are people who are disillusioned, right? There will be people who get disillusioned, lose their identity. How can we, maybe bring Betty, how can we bring the present? We do know the future will happen, but how do we live in the present? Even if that uncertainty is there, can that help young people's well-being?
The media is not helping in terms of the statistics. I was reading some of the statistics, and is this really real? So you've got things like 40% of the current jobs is automation. This was McKinsey 2025. And if I can quote another one by Goldman Sachs in 2023, they say 3 million full-time jobs globally could be affected by generative AI. Where are they getting that data from? Who is measuring all of this? Okay, so probably they are. Maybe AI is measuring it. That's fine. However, we need these functional skills. So in the past, we've had functional skills around arithmetic, around speaking. They are still important. And I think for us as educationists, what we need to look at now is, how does those functional skills look like? Ofsted is now focusing on this, and within inspections are looking at how are we preparing these children? What are the functional skills that these children are learning? Because what you cannot replace is the fact that children should be able to read. As an adult, whether AI automation or not, you still should be able to read. You still should be able to tell whether AI has got it wrong or not. So regardless of automation, you still need that level of education, which is the functional skills, which is all the other things that AI is not able to do. And children knowing that they still have a purpose, they can make a difference. Yes, there are some roles that possibly could be affected, but that's a conversation to talk about within the classroom settings in terms of looking at career pathways. Where do they want to go? Where is their passion? And Matthew, you touched on this earlier on, talking about where are their interests and how would we know their interests if they are not exposed to all these different types of opportunities and subject areas and disciplines. They need to be able to experience it to know that I love this side of work. I love music. Yes, AI could support me. I can leverage on AI to even enhance my musical skills. but they need to understand the basics. So my son is in uni studying data science. He did computer science A level, and he's gone on to studying data science and mathematics. And constantly at the dinner table, we're having this conversation of him telling me how things are rapidly changing. However, he comes back and go, those tools sometimes get it wrong, mummy. And I have to always go back and check. So even that level, yes, they're all saying, oh, data science, their jobs will be replaced. It's not entirely the truth, I believe, because you still need the human side. And it's about educating our young children to understand that what the media publish is one thing, and what the reality is another thing. And I think it's our jobs to reassure them that we still need the human effect on this.
So just going back to well-being, do we keep that well-being element? Because from what we're saying, there's the fear, right?
Yeah.
So Matthew, you mentioned when you were growing up, there was deprivation in the area at 4 levels of generation. Would you say identity is really important with anxiety? Or how do we, in everything that is happening, how do we keep young people being less anxious?
I don't think it's identity 100%, because I think, and I would have said identity until I moved internationally, where I got introduced to kind of like the term third culture kids, where you are like British, but you live in Romania, and you also are living with people from around the world. So I would have said, yeah, being English from Stoke-on-Trent, that's who I think I self am. That drives me my background. But I think identity is not 100% it. I think people have got to find, like, for me, once I found the thing that I was interested in, that drove me forward. But as I said earlier, that was through exposure and almost trial and error. So I think building opportunities and space for people to try new things is going to be crucial. And I think if the new curriculum is going to be stripped back and allow for more scope, and I think, like, to be honest, we had an issue with our plumbing in our house, and someone wanted to charge me €400 to come out and fix it. If that person's earning €400 a day, they're doing better than I'm doing. I know robotics is there and things like that, but we might need more practical hands-on skills. Like, I probably need to brush up on my DIY, and I think that human connection side, I don't want to see well-being support outsourced to chatbots. And one thing I am worried about generally is like a two-tier society forming. Whereas if you are of a social, if you can afford so much, or if you have so much money, or there's like a class system, like you get the AI, which might make mistakes and might give you misinformation and get things wrong, but you can afford a human, so you get a slightly more privileged, where you'll get someone who will fact check, and you'll get the empathy, and that's something I generally am concerned, something that we need to consider. And I think that, yeah, that's, for me, that spark and passion is what you need, and helping people find that spark and passion, especially if that has been extinguished over time through family history, from personal experiences of the world. I think people need time and space and make you feel welcome. So community is a big aspect of that. And if I'm just chatting to a chatbot all day, I'm not getting community. And I think that is something is going to be increasingly important, I think, to people's life chances and experiences.
Oh, beautiful. Is it purpose? Matthew has said purpose. He found his sense of purpose. He found a social community. Is that where the link is with reducing some of these levels of maybe things like anxiety we see in young people?
I think if I'm talking about UK education system, of course, with the new Ofsted framework, having personal development and well-being as one of the areas of the toolkit where inspectors would look like, should not be just taken as a tick box. So it should really be a case of schools providing that support and space for children that needs this. And I do believe all children need that. I mean, we are in that digital era where majority is on the screen. Okay. So children are stuck to the screen at home. And even in schools, we are using screens to teach our children, but bringing in that aspect of that relational aspect, that human aspect, and supporting these children, creating those safe space. And I don't want to sound like I'm constantly referring to Ofsted, but one of the, I think, the way golden thread they talk about is belong, achieve, thrive. So do the children in your school feel like they belong here? How do they belong? How do we know you belong? Are their voices heard? Are they able to share their opinion? Do their questions matter? have they got a voice there as a school holding that and hearing these children and developing those skills for the children? I think is going to go a really long way, and not just a case of everything becoming digital and AI and, let's automate everything, because we are social beings and these children need that. I think that would support their well-being.
That's powerful. I think in Japan, they have something like before a child is 3, they're not allowed a device. And then after 3, it's like 30 minutes only that they go on their devices. In the Western world, we have like 4 hours on average, our young people, depending on the devices. It's a really, really critical question there. Is it the school? Is it the home? Who governs screen time? How does screen time affect things like well-being, especially the more we move into an AI world where most of what we build will be indeed channeling everybody onto some sort of screen, onto some sort of device. I think we saw yesterday there was a pet feeding tool that takes a video as the pets are eating, and then it then decides how much food to release. So we are living in an interesting world. Kitchen truth today is something feels off. And maybe it's because we are complex, right? It's not a simple thing. We can just say it's identity. We can just say it's purpose. There's so we're human beings, not human doings. And AI is kind of driving us to be human doing. So really interesting segment there. Thank you so much both. Let's move into where training comes in. So there's the element of growing, teacher training. How do we contribute? And so here, let's look at knowledge. If knowledge is no longer the advantage, what can we say is the advantage? Because AI can write, AI can calculate, AI can analyze. So what are we actually developing then? What are we training? What are the trainers going to be learning when they're going for teacher training?
Yeah.
So what skills are becoming more valuable? Matthew, jump in here and help us.
I would say determination is one thing for me. Life is hard. Learning is hard. Me, like, I've been doing some AI coding, and that's hard. Sometimes it works, sometimes it's terrible. Sometimes working with AI is hard. Doing anything is difficult. And I think that teaching people that not everything's going to always go your way, and here's how you handle that emotionally, and here's people who are around you to support you. Yeah, and I think that ability to push through something that's difficult. I've never been like something that's life-changingly difficult. I mean, like pushing through that uncomfortable moment sometimes in learning and life, where you get to the other side and you go, okay, now I get it, I understand it. Not everything, like with social media, not everything's going to be handed to you on a silver platter. And I do think this is wherever I'm saying is wrapped up with mental health and support around you and care. But I think being able to struggle a little bit and go forward, like linking back to the entrepreneurship idea, every time we have someone who's an entrepreneur come speak at my school, it sounds incredibly difficult, but they didn't give up because it was difficult. And I think surviving in a world where there's automation is probably going to be a little bit more difficult. And we need to teach people that they're ultimately, but again, that's that social contract aspect. If you try hard, you will get something at the end. There's a reward for it. And I think we need to make sure that that is there. But I think determination and being sometimes uncomfortable, not being stimulated constantly might be good as well.
So what I'm hearing from you, Matthew, is even when we're doing CPD, even as we're training teachers, it's not just the traditional, when you're going for your CPD, it's all, this is general safeguarding. It's now actually building in the skills even within CPD, right? Building those life skills. Almost like the things that we want trained in teacher training is what we need to be doing when we're doing teacher training and CPD, is what I'm hearing.
If you look at Instagram, everyone wants here's 3 things you can do to fix the problem. Here's the da 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 da. Here's the quick fix. Here's the hack. And there is most times in life there isn't a hack for everything. Like there is occasionally, but most things don't. There's no life hack or the 3 things that work, because that might work for me, that isn't going to work for you. So I think we need to give people things that are real and concrete and work with them. And implementing AI into a school or implementing a new, like over the years I've implemented growth mindset, cross curricular, way before AI. They were all difficult to do because you've got to shift people's practice who are very busy and to do things slightly differently. And me giving them a pitch deck and saying an Instagram video showing them how to use a tool and then disappearing is not going to help anything. And I think with students as well and pupils, they feel that connection and realness. And if it's been the same since the day one of teaching, they knew I cared about them. They were invested in me and what I was going to say. If I was aloof and didn't care, they wouldn't care. That's with the students I work with. That's with staff I work with in my school and other schools. You've got to be invested with them and work with them and alongside them. And I think people need to, again, that loops back to that community side and that community aspect and that bit of determination and difficulty. Not everything's a quick fix in life.
And Betty mentioned something around that, Matthew. I love the way you've looked that in. Betty said that some of the Ofsted framework, one of the most important things it starts with is belonging. Is that the kind of general direction when we're talking about teacher training, when we're talking about teacher training, it's not just about you've got this new CPD, but it's actually what does growth look like, the actual things that maybe a bit non-conventional. And Betty, what would you say real growth would look like, both for the teacher when they're learning, and then it then translates to the student?
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I mean, in terms of knowledge is so accessible now. You can just Google everything and find it. But what we need to focus on is the relational side. How do we do that? So bringing back that collaborative approach within the classroom setting. I mean, you're talking about that growth mindset, teaching the children resilience. How do you become resilient if you don't fail? So creating those opportunities for our children to fail. And we are in a world where everybody is just out there on the social media. Look at how amazing I am. And automatically makes them feel like they are failures. But for me, personally, I do believe that failure is part of your success, and teaching our children to fail is essential. How do we do that? How do we go about it within a classroom work setting where it's not a case of let's just get all these fractions correct. Let's just get all these exams questions correct, but move away to a case of problem solving. How do we problem solve that? Because I think those are the skills that children would need in the world of AI that AI cannot actually teach them. And I believe that that's what will set them apart, because if they have that critical mindset, problem solving strategies, then they will build that resilience and it will support their well-being, it will support their growth. And it doesn't really matter whether they are educated in one field or not, because they are resilient, they can fail. They can actually be successful in whichever area that is applicable. And I'll share personal experience. So I've built my website, my recruitment side of the business, renovate.co.uk, and my podcast website. I've built it myself. I'm not a computer science. I'm sorry, Matthew. I have no idea about coding. Never. I mean, my son studied computer science. And anytime I look at it, I'm thinking, what is this? I have no idea. But I've been able to build websites. And I'm currently building an app to support school improvement so schools can leverage on it. I can do that, but how can I do it? Building the app, I failed so many times. Sometimes that's like, I need to give up. This is not my thing. But then I pick it up the following day and go, oh, look at this. This is amazing. And I think that's the level of things that we need to be providing and exposing our children to. It's that problem solving. It's that let's fail because it's part of that success. How do we build our resilience for a world that is so changing at a fast pace that any government document could catch up with, or any curriculum could catch up with? I think this is essential for me.
I love the fact that just in this room, there is everything that we're talking about today, because just in this room, you have educators, whether it's educators who, have failed or have learned or are building resilience skills. It's all within the world of what is happening right now. So everyone speaking right now is talking from lived experiences, and therefore that is when we're thinking about teacher training. Are we building in those examples of lived experiences within how we teach our children? I think Betty talked about resilience, and Matthew, you talked about growth mindset
as well. And I think that sometimes you can fall back on the line, our kids ultimately got to sit in an exam hall, so they have to know some things. But who knows what the future's going to behold and what exams might look like and what the world's going to look like. And the world isn't just about exams. I think it's about They need to know the value of actually learning something and mastering a craft, and that could be whatever they're interested in. Like, could be coding on their own website, could be making an app, could be singing, writing a musical, or writing a book. Like,
Failing bitterly, yeah, why not?
it's one of those things where you've got to see the value of, okay, I've learned that thing that was difficult, but I feel good about that. And I think that that's the thing we need to double down on, is it's kind of that journey, and why it's not, you don't have to learn it because it's an exam.
No.
You're learning this because it's gonna actually help you in your life.
I love that. I love that. You're learning this because it's actually going to help you in your real life. And that's what it's about, right? In front of us, we have real human beings.
I was reading the Young Minds review for 2024, where children were reviewing the experiences of GCSEs and how the feedback on there, you look at it and it's like, wow, how are we communicating this to the children? Because are we saying that's what they need? Is that the ultimate? And is that why they're feeling that way? But if they know that they're setting that exam actually to prepare them for the next phase of going to read, maybe further into chemistry, or it would broaden their knowledge in one area. And it's not just, of course, we want them to work hard. We want them to be able to be successful in it. But it's not the end of the world in that sense of whether they're successful or not, and how that's communicated within the school environment, I think is important. High expectations, great. But those exams pressures, how do we manage that? How do we communicate that to support their children's well-being? So they are driven themselves rather than we almost like forcing them. And I will speak from different cultures. So I did my up to my first degree in Ghana. I came from a background where we wanted to learn as a young generation, and that still happens. If anyone has taught in Ghana, or teachers who've worked in Ghana before, you will see the children wants to learn within that context. We will go and read ahead of before the teacher comes to the classroom to teach. And I don't know if that's the experience in Romania. I don't know if that's the experience there, but we were so determined. And you see that in the classroom currently. If you go in there, these children want to learn. They want to do well. They want to excel. And I'm not disputing the fact that we see that in our classroom here in the UK right now. But is that the case majority of the time? Why are children not really motivated? Is it because of the narrative that we are giving them? Could we change the narrative that they're not learning because of the exam, but actually we are preparing them for the next phase of their life? We are giving them a life skill. I don't know what the solution is, but yeah, I just thought it's very, very different in terms of experience and in terms of how children see the learning, especially at that secondary level.
And sometimes it's good to have a debate where there isn't a conclusive answer, especially when it comes to a topic like the topic we're having today. We do know it is truth, and it's an uncomfortable truth. A lot of the jobs that are there today will simply not exist in the future. But the other uncomfortable truth, which the media might not want to embrace, which Matthew touched on, those kind of hacks, right? We don't know. We really don't know what it. There's so much predictability. That is saying something really important. I grew up in a third world country, and the forces outside of yourself when it comes to learning. Right? There's a
You
big
just do
thing
it.
chasing you with poverty.
An
You've got to learn,
option.
because that's the
That's
way out
right.
of poverty. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe for the young people, for them, it's going to be, we've got to learn because there's a machine.
Yes, right. That's right. What does Nelson Mandela
Right?
say? The only way to change poverty is education. I think, yeah, yeah, you don't have a choice.
Brilliant. So we're not preparing children for the future necessarily today, right? Because we've got no idea what that future looks like, but we are preparing them for a version of themselves that will exist right now and we need to exist in the future. I love today's topic. We could potentially, the three of us being educators, we could debate on this all day long. But so we're moving to the next section where we usually do what we call our three takeaways. And usually I do the three takeaways, but I'd love for each of us to handle one takeaway, if
Okay.
that's okay. So what's one thing that you can take away from this conversation, that you would like to share? It's a broad topic. Or maybe pick one thing that's really stood out for you.
Hmm.
Yeah. So let's start with you, Betty.
Okay, so for me, I would say inclusion must include future relevance. And Matthew, you touched on that so well. So not just present access, but looking at the future. How does that look for our sent children or our determined children? Approach to it. So, because I think that is important, and just to support that equity, it is got to be equitable for everyone. So for me, it is about inclusion must be future relevant.
And AI is going to help with that.
And AI is going to help with that, hopefully.
Yeah, I think things need to feel meaningful. Like if I'm going to engage with it, it needs to feel meaningful to me and to young people and make those connections that maybe when we're teaching Pythagoras theory or something like that, when we're not always very explicit about how these things are actually going to pay off. And sometimes the narrative of why do we teach these things? Well, maybe that's more of the defensive line, that if you can't describe why something's meaningful, then does it belong in the curriculum? I'm not saying Pythagoras should go in or out, but it's an example that comes up quite a lot. And meaningful and supported, I think, link that inclusion piece as well. It's got to be meaningful, but you also, yes, things are going to be difficult. Yes, like go back to Betty's example, building an app might not always be a straight road. Developing a new skill set is not always a straight road, but I guarantee Betty's gone online, watched YouTube videos, spoken to people.
Tell me.
There's support around there as well. So meaningful, and when things get difficult, people are there to help you as well.
Fantastic.
People are there to help you, not AI.
People. So yes, you can have tools, you can have AI, you can have tech, but you got to be the person that goes out there and actually finds that information, and like Betty built her own app and, built her own website, even if, she had a lot of people doing it for her as a head teacher for lots of, now she's the one doing it and learning from it and growing from it. So growth means we adapt, not just memorize. And sometimes our exams prepare our young people to memorize. So lovely. We usually also have this thing where we call our one big change. Our one big change came about. One of my coaches, Coach Al, spent the better part of 6 months telling me off for having too many things on my plate when I was building my business. And so one big change became everything about what we do at Lockeys. It's literally, we actually have one big change workshop. And one big change is always, what's one thing that we can do right now that will bring the biggest change in everything that we're doing? And sometimes it's one big thing where we do little things that lead to that one big thing. So our one question here, if you had to focus on one thing, just one thing, again, I'm just going to do a very quick round robin, just make it a bit equitable. I'll start this time with Matthew. If you were just to say one thing, just one thing, what would you say the future is going to be like, and focus on this, and this will help in that future? Well, we know it's going to be an unpredictable future, but there's a chance this would be in the future, and therefore maybe focus on this thing, and maybe it will make the load lighter, just, something, just one big thing.
I would say talk to the students at your school and see. You don't know how to support them unless you're speaking to them and finding out where their anxieties are, what they're worried about, what skills gaps they're worried about having. Like again, I said earlier on, I'm 42, they're 15. Like I can't. I'm worlds apart in terms of experience. So just speaking to them and asking them what's going on, and then planning collaboratively from there with the students. You can only support people by understanding where they're coming from.
And you say that, I think both of you say that throughout the episode, they are human, sense of belonging, community. And I think Matthew is the one who said this, they wouldn't care until they know you care. So talk to them, create those talky moments. I think that can actually also go to home. Talk to talk to our young people at home as well. Let them know you care. T, how about you? What would your one big change be?
Relational. So it goes back to our relationships. We have always lived on that philosophy of every behavior is a form of communication.
So relationship.
Relationships.
Yeah.
Is it Rita Patson that talks about every child deserves a champion, an adult who would not give up on them and insist on the power of connection? And I think that's what we need, is that relationship. Because screen, chatbot, whatever can give them everything, but what it can give them is that human relationship. So let's develop that.
Human relationship. That strong sense of, love. And I think AI normally sounds very, what's the word, confident.
Even when it's wrong.
Yeah, they're so confident that now, and they've been trained to repeat back, those kind of like psychology tools, but they will never have that warm hug. They will, the things that are relational. So beautiful.
Empathy, reading the room.
Yes, yeah, yeah. They'll help you understand things, but they will not help you know what it means to be a being. So lovely. So just be mindful where you're putting your energy today, because whatever the future brings, today will always exist. And maybe as educators, our main strength is in helping the young people kind of focus in on what's happening today. Yes, the future will come, but just today. So beautiful. I have loved every moment, Matthew and Betty, that we spent together. And as we come to a close, there's two things. So we have our rapid fire section where we want to know who you are. We've been talking about relationships here the whole time and being human beings. So our rapid fire section, we ask you one question very, very quickly. No thinking, because this is something about who you are. Be challenging. We've been talking about challenge today, but we promise it's not hard. Are you ready to play the rapid fire section?
Yes, let's go for it.
Fantastic. So, ladies first, if that's okay. Betty, if we start with you. So, this very difficult question, be very careful how you answer it. Tea or coffee or something stronger? What would you go for?
No sugar. It's just the way I think clearly.
Fantastic. Tea, black tea, white tea?
Tea.
Black tea,
No sugar.
no sugar. So everybody who's listening to the weather today or later when you're going to buy Betty a coffee or going to her podcast, to have a conversation, take tea. Priya, bring her a black tea and make sure there's no milk or sugar in it. Matthew, same question. Tea or coffee?
Coffee for me.
You can always say something stronger. We know teaching is not easy.
It's a Thursday night, so tomorrow something stronger. What a coffee.
Coffee. How do you take your coffee? White, black, sugar?
Black now, and if I have coffee, my wife's got me onto oat milk, so I have an oat milk cappuccino occasionally.
Okay, very healthy. I thought for a second you might say turmeric coffee.
No. Just black coffee, because I think British tea was quite hard to get hold of when I first moved to Romania, so I kind of switched over to coffee.
So you were forced by circumstances to go to the dark side. Brilliant. Okay, so the next one, again, very simple. So we'll start with you now, Matthew. A moment in life that changed everything for you.
For me, I got invited to go and help teach some media camera skills to some students at a sixth form. So they'd not done it media at IGCSE, and then they were going to study at AS. So me and my friends that had done a bit of editing and media stuff and taught there, we went to that college, so they added a connection with us, and I loved it. And then I signed up to become a teacher after doing a week of that. So that was the moment that changed. I was just hovering around doing jobs, chef, running recycling for the NHS and things like that, like random long list of jobs. But that was the moment where I thought, okay, I really enjoy teaching, and signed up to a PGC that afternoon.
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah, look at it. Very quick decision making. They always say the mark of a successful person is how quickly they make decisions. So very clearly, that explains why you're director at your college. Betty, same question to you. A moment in life that changed everything for you.
So mine is quite a difficult one. So when I was ahead, I was invited to speak at the Diverse Leaders Program. And at the time when I was going to do that speech, I had my senior brother who was dying from hepatocellular carcinoma. And when I cannot do that speech, there's no way I can go and do the talk, knowing very well that this is what was happening. And I remember him turning to me and say, get that strength up there and speak, because that energy, I will feel it in my hospital bed. And for some strange reason, I stood on that platform and spoke to this incredible teachers. And it was like, oh my gosh, you've inspired me so much. I want to take this to another level. So the Diverse Leaders, if you don't know about it, was a DFE program where teachers who are within middle leaders support them to get into a senior leadership role. And from that meeting, I've had so many of them that I have supported or shared their journey of getting into senior leadership. And it took that moment to do that. So for me, I'm so grateful that I had every reason to say I wouldn't do it, but stood on that feel the fear and do it anyway. Stood on that
Okay.
platform with everything else that's going on and still did it. And it's inspired so many people, and they are in education making a difference. So great.
From a really difficult place, you've brought about a lot of sunshine. So
Yeah.
you are living what you were talking about the whole of today's episode. Wow, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's powerful. Okay, Becky, since you've just spoken, maybe a favorite book or a favorite quote.
You know what? People who've heard me will probably go, here we go again, but I will not stop talking about it. It's When the Adult Change, Everything Changes by Paul Dix. Because I do believe it's all about the adults in the classroom. It's all about what do we do to support these children. When we change, when we create a safe environment, the children can learn. As we talk about it in neuroscience, children would only learn when they feel safe. So when we change, everything changes. Definitely
When
my
we
top one.
change. Wow. Matthew, same question to you.
Mine's not an education book. Mine's one of the being dyslexic and not knowing that till I was older. This is the only one of the books for me as I read as a child that stuck with me. It's a book called Adam's Ark. Not many people know it, but it kind of it stuck with me as like it's a book that I read and read again as a kid that found it very challenging to read because I usually read comics because it was easier.
And
But
they
yeah,
stick
so
with you.
that's a book that's always stuck with me just for that message that I got into reading because of it.
Wow. Okay. So the last one, be ready for this, is a very difficult one. So we'll start with you, Matthew. If this season of your life had a theme song, what would that theme song be?
Oof. Oh, I can't really think of one off the top of my head. Something calming and then occasionally someone screaming, probably.
Why not? That's what school is all about.
something very chill and then very dramatic all of a sudden.
Maybe it's maybe a Freddie Mercury song or something. Like
Something like that.
which
Something
one?
that
Like
builds.
Galileo,
Something that
Galileo.
builds.
I think I'll go for Rise Up by
Okay.
Andra Day. Because
Yeah,
in
yeah.
moments like this in education, of course, for our teachers, for our children, for our leaders, it calls for exactly that. Let's rise up. We've got this.
We've got this. Let's rise up. Fantastic. Now, before we close, I know you all have different projects, different things you're working on at the minute. Matthew said maybe that side hustle or something. And I believe Betty mentioned a podcast. Yeah. Would you tell our viewers where can they find out a little bit more about you, about your projects? Are there some links that they can click on?
You go, Betty.
Okay. So, of course, you can find me on LinkedIn when it's regarding my recruitment and consultancy business. I do school improvement work. You can find me on there. It's Renovate Recruitment and Consultancy. But also, I do lots of work around women empowerment, and that is done on my YouTube platform, which is called B3 Inspire, Build, Believe, Become. And my website is b3inspire.com. So you can reach out.
Com. Please do reach out. Matthew, how about you?
Me, again, LinkedIn, but my website is inanded.com where you can find reach out there. There's some like quizzes and things you can take on there and some free resources. Kind of just tried to put everything in one place now for people to find.
That's away.
What kind of quizzes, Matthew?
Sorry, there's just
What
like
kind of quizzes?
there's some questions you can answer about your school in AI, and then it sends you some different resources based on what you answer. Ones that I think will be useful from like the bank. They're all on my website somewhere, but I think it kind of like makes it not. There's no AI involved, but I think based on your answers, that it triggers like a different email coming your way about something that might be useful to you.
That's
Okay.
interesting. Personalized. That's
Yeah, it's
great.
at the top of my website, so there's like a take a quiz option there. But yeah, so yeah,
Yeah.
that's mainly where you can find some stuff. Mainly, I don't have any time for TikTok or anything like that, so LinkedIn is the main place I'm posting.
Yvonne, can I just add as well? Yvonne, can I also just add that I've got a newsletter on LinkedIn, which is AI and Teacher Workload, where I share some tips to support teachers. So look out for those as well.
Both of those really powerful. So, Becky, really powerful. We had a head teacher on our episode last week, and the thing that came up from that episode was teacher tools in schools around teacher workload are so important. That's one thing that's really being prioritized. And then Matthew is a lot of schools just don't know what tools to use, and schools are very different. So the fact
And
that
there's
you've got
so many tools. Where
I can tell you story upon story when we do the matching. between the vendors and the schools. The schools come across the vendor, or, the light bulbs that go off. It's wild, wild west. Somebody made a comment in my LinkedIn. But thank you so much to both of you, not just for this conversation, but I really believe, and I of you really believe that you to really know what you're talking around this topic, where a lot of people feel they're floating. And we've touched a lot of different elements within a very short period of time. We've had laughs, we've had moments of, just how we would have loved to have it. So thank you so much.
So thank you
Thank
for
you.
inviting me on.
Yeah, no, we look forward to having you back. Next week, we're asking this question. When it comes to AI, are we really being told the truth about what we're being told? So stick
It's
with
interesting.
us as we look more into the world of AI. Thank you so much, and bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.